So this video is for those of you who are maybe looking for a bit of a reality check for getting started with essentially the journey that you're going to go on with working on your social skills. Now, everyone has to start somewhere, and if anything, that's going to be my topic for this video, to kind of like show you, or not necessarily show you, but to at least explain to you that everyone has to start at the beginning. You know, people weren't necessarily born with confidence. They developed it, they practiced it. And the more that you can understand, if you're going out to socialize with people, whether it be through the concept of cold approaching or actually putting yourself in environments that allow you to communicate, then you will find that as time goes on, especially if you're getting desensitized to it, that you will in fact become a much more confident person. So my plan in this video is to just kind of go over a few points with you to elaborate a little bit on, you know, if you're going to go and do all this stuff, what is the best course of action to take? And also, what kind of expectations should you be setting for yourself as well? Now, if all of that sounds good, before I do get started, I would absolutely love it if you can subscribe to the channel, if you can like the video, or maybe perhaps even like it a little bit later, but at the very least subscribe, because every subscription that I get helps me out to reach even more people with their social anxiety. I can't speak now, to help them with their social anxiety and ultimately to make them more confident and to give them the social life and dating life that they deserve. So I think one of the first major problems that people will struggle with is the fact that they set way too high expectations for when they get started. So if we look at a typical scenario, or in fact maybe scenarios of people that I've worked with or met over the years from working behind the scenes in the dating industry, it's usually been people who have lacked some kind of social life. Perhaps maybe they've just grown up in an environment that wasn't very fulfilling to them, or people kind of like knew that person, but they weren't maybe necessarily friends with them, or maybe they kind of like bullied that person. Or the other third one would be that people have come out of relationships and they just don't know how to socialize again, or just how to properly communicate, because they've done a routine for so long that they kind of come out of that relationship, whether it be friends or even in dating. So maybe they've had like a boyfriend or girlfriend, and this isn't just necessarily tying into men, this is women as well. But when they've then come out of a relationship after so long, they've then really struggled to put themselves out there again. They just don't know how the dating scene has changed. They don't know how to actually communicate with new people again, or maybe even how to flirt or have those kind of conversations that lead to something romantic happening, because they've just been very comfortable with the lifestyle or routine that they had prior to that. And so when you've got people who are then maybe coming into this, and then they're setting the bar way too high. They're like, right, the next person I speak to, it's got to go really well, or I got to have an amazing conversation. If I want to network and meet people, everything's got to go really, really smoothly. And of course, they just put way too much pressure on themselves. And of course, this is just going to fall flat on their face, and it doesn't go well. And in fact, even by setting this expectation of like, especially, in fact, a great example really would be if a guy is trying to go out on dates, he's just come out of a relationship and he's trying to sort of like go on dates and stuff. He might set the expectation thinking like, oh, you know what, I've got to be dating the hottest of women, and then I've got to be sleeping with them on the first date, or the next date that I go on, the girl's definitely going to be the one, and, we'll end up probably having this relationship, or we'll go on multiple dates together and it'll all work out. The expectations are just way too high. And most people then shoot themselves in the foot because they're not being realistic with the situation, that they are out of practice or they lack experience or understanding of how to interact with people. And so you've got to kind of work with that. If you don't, one of the struggles that you will have is that you're just going to end up going on these dates or going networking and stuff, and you're not really going to be able to speak to people, or you're going to be overthinking things that you think you should be saying, and it's just going to go wrong. Now, I'm trying to be somewhat vague with it. I'm kind of trying to sort of skirt around the issue in a sense that there's not really going to be one particular thing that may go wrong, but usually from setting too high expectations, people just tend to give themselves a lot of anxiety because they are just hoping, really desperately hoping that things work out in their favor. But the reality is, rejection and failure and things not going your way is just a part of life. So you have to try and expect that may happen, and that may happen a lot if you don't know what you're doing. Believe it or not, even the best dating coaches that maybe you're aware of that are out there, or social coaches, or even if we're going to be a bit more normal here, even the most confident of people that you know in your life, at some point or another, they weren't confident. They weren't born with the ability to suddenly go up to people and be like, hey, good to meet you. Yeah, let me take your number. Let's go out. That never happened. But what did happen is that they put themselves out there in as many social situations as possible, accepted the risk that would come with that, which would be almost like a flip of a coin. Either a situation would go really well or it wouldn't go well. And by wouldn't go well, it would mean that the person might be ignored. They might not get the conversations that they want. They might not get a phone number, or overall, they might just get rejected. That the person that they're speaking to just isn't interested in having a conversation or flirting with them, whatever. And that has meant that the experience for that person has not gone the way that they wanted, and they've just walked away. But then they've accepted that, okay, this doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. This doesn't mean that I'm not going to get any successes. It just means that that person wasn't for me. Which brings me into the kind of next point, which is about bringing in a much more stoic mindset into what you're looking to achieve. Now, the likelihood is most people who are watching this video, they've either come in to watch my content through either the dating communities, or perhaps maybe you're someone who's just looking to work on your social anxiety for whatever reason. There's a number of reasons, but for whatever reason. Now, again, if you're setting the expectations way too high up for yourself, you're maybe you're not being understanding or respectful to yourself and saying okay, look, I've got to be a bit more delicate. I don't know what I'm doing. That's absolutely okay, but I'm gonna, go through that process and learn. The next thing is really the stoicism aspect, which is something that I'm a huge advocate of. I absolutely love stoicism, and I try and encourage really everyone to apply it in their lives in some form or another. So what exactly is stoicism? Well, stoicism is essentially this concept where you just focus on the things that you have control over, and you kind of let go or not worry about the things that you don't have control over. So for yourself, you have control over your emotions, your feelings, how you take action, how you react to people. And what you don't have control over is those exact same things in other people. So if you're a guy, again, we'll use the dating concept here, but if you're a guy who's seen a woman in a coffee shop and you went in and you gave her a compliment and you said to her, look, I wouldn't normally do this, but I would have regretted not saying something to you. Let's say it goes the way that you want it to, then great. You've got the phone number. You can walk away with your head held high. There you go. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But what if in the scenario you don't get a phone number? And how do you react to that? Or how do you react to the situation? Well, again, it's in your control. You also can't predict how the woman is going to respond to you asking for the phone number. You also have no idea what she's thinking or feeling in that moment as well. And a lot of guys don't tend to be very empathic or sympathetic to those situations. They think that all women are just incredibly confident, whereas actually, you know, you might be practicing and trying to learn to be bolder and more courageous, but when you're speaking to someone, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are on that same level as you, or as you're building yourself up, you might only be just a little bit more confident than them, or they could be still way more confident than you. You just don't know. And also, you can't predict what's going on in their lives either. You know, if you ask someone for their phone number, whatever the situation, they say, no, I'm not interested. How do you know that they aren't in a relationship? How do you know that they're not just thinking about a million or one other things in that moment? And unfortunately, you're just not on the priority on that. They might be attracted to you, but you're just not on the priority list for it. Or perhaps maybe someone, maybe you're just also not their type as well. You know, all these things are things that guys don't tend to think about, but they are possible things that could be the reason why she's just not attracted to you. So when you're speaking to people, don't worry about, again, with the expectations, and don't worry about what kind of outcome you get from speaking to people, because at the end of the day, you have no control over it. And even hypothetically speaking, would you want that control over it? Would you want to really go up to people and then say, ask for their number or have a conversation with them, and then everyone's saying yes? I mean, that would be pretty weird, wouldn't it? I mean, yeah, maybe it would be nice to know, like, you'll never be rejected. You'll never get some kind of failure. Everything will always be successful, but you don't really learn to develop or grow. You don't really, I suppose, even develop this sort of like hard skin or hard shell. You're just going to have life completely easy. And yes, unfortunately, there are people out there that have that kind of lifestyle, but you know, that's not the reality. That's not how things work. So it's important for you to just try and adopt this philosophy that, you know, one, setting low expectations for yourself and being understanding, like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing yet, but with a bit more practice, I will get there. And then two, saying to yourself, like, okay, look, I can't worry about how people react to me, but as long as I remain calm, as long as I remain respectful as I'm speaking to people, and also just understanding that I'm not going to be for everyone, and people aren't going to give me the time of day either. When I speak to people, just enjoying that moment, just being present in that is what's going to hopefully make things feel more successful to me. And if the other person would like to contribute to the conversation, or they also feel that attraction to me as I do to them, then hopefully, yeah, we can have something amazing happen. But I'm also not too worried if things don't go that way either. And lastly, in a way, I've kind of revealed it, but it's really about setting realistic goals along with those expectations and just taking incremental steps with building up your confidence as well. Now, I don't know where you're at with your social life. Maybe you are really, really shy. Again, maybe you've come out of a relationship and you're not actually that bad, but you just still don't know what to expect if you're going to start putting yourself out there on the dating scene. And all of them is absolutely okay. But if you can set very, very small goals first and then build up to that, whatever your end goal is, like if maybe the end goal is to, you know, have a girlfriend or be in a relationship, that maybe still even reverse engineering it, one of the first steps you've got to do, if you are someone who struggles to have conversations with people, then maybe the first step is just to be out of the house. just to be in public, just to be in social environments. Maybe if you're someone who isn't comfortable being on dates with other people, maybe it's worth you trying to develop your own independence first by, in a weird way, taking yourself out on a date. Try and enjoy your own company, or learn to enjoy your own company, and then see how you feel from that point. And then other things that you might do if you're someone who's trying to practice cold approaching, don't worry about having full-on conversations with strangers when you get started. Maybe just ask for directions. Maybe just like try and ask people questions about stuff. So like one of the things that I love doing when I'm doing coaching with people is taking them to Borough Market, where there's lots of like stands and like different foods and jams and alcohols of sorts, and just getting them to ask questions to the staff working at the stores about the different foods and wine and stuff, just to practice getting those conversations going, but also ultimately the creativity for those conversations as well. Like, oh, what's the best fudge that you sell here? Or what's the most popular wine that people are going for? Like, oh, how is that made? And you learn to actually develop a little bit of curiosity with that, which then does lead into making it easier to have conversations with people. And even thinking about it, I think one of the things that does stress people out, which is maybe where the anxiety does come in, is the window of time of, you know, how quickly should I be getting to the result that I want? And, you know, and ultimately, you know, if I were to quote what my old art teacher used to say, is like, how long's a piece of string? You know, it's entirely down to you and how much effort and commitment you put into practicing with your social skills. It's what's ultimately going to get you to where you want to get to faster. So if you are working like a 9-to-5 job, then, you know, you might not have as much free time as people who are, you know, self-employed or who run their own businesses, and they have that flexibility to be, you know, walking down the street constantly, and if they see someone to speak to, then off they go and do it. So it really is okay with just understanding that you're not going to have all the time in the world unless you kind of, I suppose, give yourself a sabbatical experience. But just set small targets and goals for yourself, and then when you feel that you've reached that, in however long it takes you to do it, maybe it takes you a couple of days, maybe weeks, months, whatever, it really depends on how much time and commitment you can make here. But if you can just start off with the basic stuff first, get good at that, then move to the next level, get good at that, move it on. And especially if you're doing this on your own, it can be very difficult. And also you've got to be sympathetic that you might be trying to overwrite years upon years of bad experience here. Now, again, I'd love to say that things can happen just overnight. You can just change your life almost instantly, but that's not how it works. You know, even if you go to like a personal trainer or a nutritionist, you're still looking at like months upon months of getting the body or the physique or the nutrition levels that you're looking to work for. So you've got to be realistic again with your achievements, but I can ultimately say that everyone though eventually gets to a plateau where you're confident, you can speak to people, you know, and unless you're going to start a YouTube channel and then try and do some like really flashy stuff, which the likelihood is you're not going to, I can assure you, give it like 3 to 6 months, whatever speed that you're going at is usually a really, really good expectation. But even just to round off this video, if you are looking to maybe just jumpstart that and get that ball rolling just a little bit faster, something that I would suggest though is not leaving the practicing of cold approaching or just working on your social anxiety. Don't leave it for a long time. You're better to start getting over it from now, from today, even from you watching this video, than to then leave it another week or another month and so on. Because if it's still going to take you a few weeks or months to actually build confidence, then you're better to just overcome that hurdle sooner than later, so you can eventually also sooner than later look back at this moment and say, I am so glad that I worked on this now rather than leaving it another 6 months, a year, and so on. And even as an older guy, I mean, I'm 38 now as well, I can really sympathize with people who have maybe only just started this either cold approach journey or working on their social anxiety at a later age, rather than what they should have done maybe in their early 20s. And I'm very fortunate that I got introduced to the concept of pickup, and even most definitely the concept of self-development and working on oneself at such a young age. I mean, I was 21 when I got introduced to the dating industry and stuff, that I was very fortunate that I was able to, you know, change my fate very early on, rather than where I'm now sort of like getting near my 40s, you know, to have been, if I hadn't have done anything over these years and gone like this now, I would have almost regretted everything in my life and gone like, oh, why didn't I do things sooner? Why have I missed so many opportunities in my life? And, you know, and I don't want people to feel that. So if you are interested potentially in help, I should say, I've actually got a link below in the description to my website, so you can actually have a look at the services and stuff that I offer. And I do have prices on my site as well. I've also got a couple of spaces available before wrapping up for Christmas, which is crazy to think, you know, that we're already getting into November now and nearly into December as well. But especially if you are watching this at least in November, otherwise it's not going to make as much sense. But I want you to just consider, like, don't leave stuff. If you are looking to work on your social anxiety or learn how to be able to cold approach so you're not missing opportunities for dating, I'd love to hear from you to book a consultation call, which I've also got a link for in the description below. If you just want to go straight to booking a call because maybe you've just enjoyed what I've spoken about, or listening to me waffling on about concepts that I genuinely love speaking about too. So I will wrap it there. As I said at the start of this, if you can please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date on all things that are to do with working on your social anxiety, building confidence, and even with doing something called cold approaching, which I genuinely believe is a skill that every man and woman should have a go at doing. It's a great way to accelerate your confidence by practicing speaking to strangers with as much support as I can possibly give you behind you. And you will find, even from just after a week, just how much more confident you are with speaking to people as you've become more desensitized to social environment. So I look forward to hopefully speaking to you if you do reach out in the links below. But otherwise, my name is Dan. This was my channel, That Danxiety Guy, and I can't wait to be putting out more videos again for you in the near future too.